people, welcome back to the second lesson, and in this lesson we're going to look at how we can make this geometry, this bunch of lines, into a 3D model, and then how we're going to add other components or generate other components from that 3D model as well. The first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is at the end of last lesson I didn't save this work. It's still unsaved, and also you can see I've actually jumped out of the edit sketch mode. So I'm just going to go back to kind of where we were before. Look up here in the file tree. You can see there's sketch number 1, which is what I was drawing on. If I right click on that and then I hit edit sketch, it takes me back into that mode where I left you. So we should name this thing, or we should save this thing, I suppose. So let's come up to the save button and then make sure you're in the correct location. So in this case, Classwork 1 Crank Arm Assembly online. And I'm going to call this one Crank Assembly. I'm going to put a version 5 for me. You might just call it Crank Arm Assembly, I suppose. Now, the distinction here is that there's an assembly, meaning it's multiple parts in the one drawing, or the one set of models, rather than a detail or just separate components. Click on Save. And then we should see it updated here in the top left corner. It's got its name. So this is for the entire file, if you like. What we're going to do, we're going to then create separate components within this file, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so let's make some of this geometry solid. So I'm going to get out of the sketch mode by clicking on Stop Sketch. And then I'm going to hit the E button for Extrude. And I'm going to select this surface here, which is going to allow me to then make that a thickness. Now I'm holding down the Shift key and I'm using the trackpad, which allows me to rotate or orbit without having to go click on it, which is quite handy. I'm going to draw this towards myself, and I think that's a distance of 20, so type in 20. And if you notice over here, it's all that the normal sort of data, I suppose, is that was the profile you selected, the directions one side, a distance, 20 millimeters, there's no taper, and the operation is interesting. It says new body, so there's nothing yet on this file that's 3D, hence why Fusion has said, well, the first time you've pulled this out, it's going to assign the new body operation to it. We click OK, and it's made that into a solid, which is fantastic. Now, the sketch that we had all this other stuff drawn on seems to have disappeared. If you come up to the tree again, you can see we've now got a body. Okay, I click on that, you can see that's it there highlighting, that big body. And then also you've got the sketches. Now, you can see the light bulb has gone off beside sketch 1. So we're going to turn that back on because we're going to need to use that sketch for the other parts as well. Okay, so let's now extrude this surface up here. So E for extrude, same thing. I think that was 40, I think, from memory. Yeah, it's 40. But this time, same information in the top half of the box, but down here, rather than saying new body, it's actually saying join this extrusion to the existing body, which is what we want it to do. We don't want it to create a cut and intersect a new body or component, because we want this part to be part of this. So join is the correct operation here. Click OK. And we repeat the same thing for the profile down the bottom. Select it, E, pull it out, and you see it defaults to join as it meets something else. And I think the distance here was 30. Yep, consulting my notes. Oh, that's not right. What have we got going on there? 30. No, I'll get there yet. 30, and it's a join, and OK. All right, at that point there, this is one body. If we click onto it, you see in the bodies, it's one body. Now, if you leave it as a body and you start then drawing other things on top of it, they will have the potential to join to it as well. So the workflow is a bit like this. You draw your object as a body from scratch. You then convert the body into a component once you're happy that you've finished with it. So I'm looking at that, and yeah, I'm fairly confident that that is correct. Otherwise, I can go back and change it later on. And then underneath, above the body sections here, or on the body I should say, if I right click, scroll down a little bit, right click, scroll down, one of the options is create components from bodies. I select that, and you'll now see that the bodies have disappeared because there's no longer a body, it's no longer a 3D object that's referred to as a body, but it's now been transposed, I suppose, or made into a component. Now, Fusion will now see this as a separate component, or you might want to call that a separate part to any other part that we then create. So what we'll do is name this component what it actually is. So I'm going to select that once, select that twice, and here's the confusing part. In our notes, this part of the crank arm is actually called a body. So hopefully that doesn't confuse you too much, and enter. Now I'm just looking here and I can actually see there's an error. I can see the distance between the 2 points here on these circles is far too great. So I can go back and I can change that because I know that's on sketch 1. So even though it's been converted into a component, and you can see by this different color here, I can go back to the sketch that was drawn on, right click, edit the sketch, and I need to put a constraint in from the center of this circle to the center of this circle. So D for dimension, select the center of one circle, select the center of the other, drag it out, and that distance should be a distance of 70 millimeters. Hit enter, stop the sketch, and then that will update into the body, from the body through to the component as well. Let's save that before we lose it. Okay, and now we can turn our attention to putting on the washer and also putting on the handle. That can be in the next lesson.